I'm going to read from my essay Aftermath. I'll be reading part 4. I encourage you to check out my other videos and my books. Without further ado, let's dive right in. It's been too many emotions, and I keep asking myself, what would other people have done had they been in the same situation? I believe that people were more dismissive of my situation, partly because it didn't happen to them. You don't have renter's insurance? Well, you should have thought about that. You didn't let management know you would be gone? Well, hard lesson learned. Not only have I felt as though I am supposed to get over this very quickly, I feel as though people don't empathize because they don't think about this happening to them. And I guess that makes sense, because even though break-ins do happen, they are still not necessarily commonplace. And so people have a hard time imagining this happening to them. But imagining it happening to yourself. Imagine someone coming in, leaving behind used condoms, scattering your clothes and your notebooks all over the place, stealing your most precious belongings such as your camera and your guitar equipment. Imagine that feeling of walking inside your apartment after a restful sabbatical, only to find your place in ruins. They used a drill to get in. I guess what confuses me is why they settled on my place, how they didn't get caught, and what they really thought they would get out of breaking into my place. I don't understand why people would do something like that, go through your house and your private drawers, and not respect your space, stealing your information in order to perpetrate crimes and destruction. I guess there is a part of me that would acknowledge that even though I am doing better now, having a new place to be and live, the feelings of fear and anger are still there. It wasn't okay what they did. I keep thinking they could have enjoyed the space instead of trashing it. They could have enjoyed something nice. Instead, they literally trashed the place. I feel as though things are beginning to get better. It is true that what happened was inexcusable and that it wasn't okay. You can't just commit felonies and not have some degree of shame or guilt. Yet, I don't understand why it was overkill. They didn't need my flash drives, and they didn't need to ransack my place and make it dirty, and yet that was what they did. And then the police closed the case to the point to where no one was brought to justice. My understanding then is that this is something that I need to overcome, because I don't really have a choice in the matter. I do feel better now that I am not home in my new place, but this is all really difficult for me to process. I keep thinking about the neighbors who didn't do anything before, during, or after the event. I didn't know that my neighbors held me in such high contempt. I would have thought that they would be able to do something about it, but they did nothing. They were not my friends. I have worked really hard to build up my life in a positive way, and I have worked on my relationships with others, and I would think that even though I'm not perfect, I am nice and I try to be kind to others. Yet here, it didn't matter. It didn't matter at all. In fact, because people brought in the kind of people that do stuff like this, and I think it is unbelievably cruel. You think that you can trust people and that they wouldn't screw you over like this, but if they were partly responsible for what happened, I can't help but feel betrayed, as though this definitely could have been a lot better. And part of the problem is that I really thought that I was safe. I wouldn't have thought that I was unsafe where I was at. Even though I have seen a lot of things, from people dealing drugs to bringing in sketchy people into the neighborhood, I was very confident that I would be okay. We took all the precautions to keep my place safe, and I really liked where I was at, and so even with all the problems, I never thought that it would ever be like this. That might be the thing that is so hard about this. They call it the bystander effect. It seems to me that I will never be able to trust a local community ever again, because I can't trust them to do the right thing. I can't trust them to be concerned and caring, and in fact, it seems silly now to think that I was safe in my own home. Why would I think I'm safe in my own home and place of residence? It was obviously a foolish thing to think, and obviously there is more to it than I thought that there was. People don't like you, they don't care about you, and so they betray you. I talked already about the idea that I couldn't let them win. And I admitted that they already did win. I will say that they only won the battle and not the war, but the reason why I say that they did win the battle is because they literally destroyed me for quite a while. Like I said, I had breakdowns throughout the process, and I didn't want that, but that was exactly what happened anyway. It became a situation where I felt as though I couldn't handle the consequences of the actions of others, and with not having any help at all to figure things out about what I needed to do, it seemed to me that my life was over. I remember beating myself up and cursing my brain and being so mean to myself because I had felt as though I was not effective enough. I wouldn't objectify my mind like that unless I was in a very precarious and explosive sense of self with volatile and painful emotions. I don't see myself as the smartest person in the world, but I do work to improve my intelligence. I see myself as wanting to better myself and to learn new things. I was beating myself up for not doing enough, for being smart enough, for not taking the right steps to protect my home. I felt stupid for not being able to get all the stuff done that I needed to, and feeling as though I could never trust anybody again. Stupid in the first place for trusting them. And so what really matters here is that they did win temporarily, because for a while I was beating myself up constantly and going into hyperdrive, beating myself up and being so nasty to myself. It was brutal and it felt incredibly painful, and yet I was the one that had to live with the consequences. From cleaning up the place, which was a complete disaster, to finding a new place to move to dealing with all the falling out of having my identity compromised, such as opening up a new bank account. It was incredibly overwhelming to experience all of this. But loved ones also pulled through for me, and that is partly why I am mentioning all of this. Many loving people and close friends helped me move. In my relationships, my emotions spilled over and were too intense for me and for others, but I'm trying to keep in mind for future reference the way that people who loved me behaved, because I really appreciate that my loved ones came through for me and that they helped me with everything. Even though I couldn't see it at the time, they really did help throughout the entire process. That is the good that I want to focus on, and I don't want to forget the kindness of the people who love me unconditionally. They made things more manageable, more tolerable. I want to appreciate that and pause to really acknowledge it, to acknowledge that it's there. I know you can't really be calm in a situation like this, and I wasn't at all. In the immediate aftermath of the break-in, I was all over the place, feeling as though I was useless, feeling as though I wasn't good enough, feeling as though I had brought this upon myself, even though I knew that I was innocent and that I had been taken advantage of. And so, what I feel is important here is to mention that at the time, my emotions were imploding, I was imploding, and I was feeling too much. I remember losing my control so much that I started shouting out around me. I didn't know what else to do because I felt so useless and like I couldn't accomplish anything, and that I wasn't going to be able to overcome all of this. Of course, I am able to process it now a lot better than I did, but at the time I had a short window of tolerance, and it was a situation where I was left in the lurch. I didn't know what to do with my feelings, and I even told myself that I should just commit suicide since nobody cares anyway, and since people could allow this to happen. I hated it, because not only did I have to deal with the break-in, I had to deal with impossible breakdowns of psychosis or worse. I was incredibly worried that I was going to have to go to the mental hospital to deal with this, because of how much was going on and how my volatile mind was taking over. How much I struggled to do anything, how much I struggled to figure anything out. It was horrible, and it was sustained, prolonged suffering. I think that is what really got to me at the time, which was that my mental health was strained by the situation. While another person might deal with the trauma of it and experience the negative emotions from what happened, I also had my mental illness on top of it, which only made things worse. And so because of that, I really struggled, and it was really hard to keep my mind mellow and neutral. Because I was waiting on things to come through, I went to my apartment only some of the time because I couldn't stay there. People were dismissive of that as well, saying that I wasn't actually homeless even though I was homeless. It might be easy to minimize an experience like this because it is easy to say that it wasn't as bad as it seems, but I believe that it was as bad as I said it was, and that is my right to communicate that. It was a dire situation where my home had been completely compromised and violated, and where I had no place to be. When people don't understand how traumatic it is to go through something like this, it is easy to minimize it and make you feel as though it doesn't really matter. But I know that the situation was pretty bad, and that is why I had to really be patient with the process. It was horrible being in my apartment and reliving the trauma, and when you're waiting for things to come through, it adds to the trauma because things just wouldn't come together. I had to live in that place for way too long, and it didn't matter how much I communicated the circumstances. I had to go through anyway. I had to wait in line like everyone else, regardless of the circumstances. People don't know what it feels like unless they go through it themselves, and even then, the situation might not be the same. For me, I know that I am working to find wisdom in this horrible situation, to be able to move forward and to do the things that I was doing. But so much was going wrong for me for so long, and I'm glad that it is finally better. But none of it has been easy.